Hello, I'm Jean McDonald and I do transitions coaching. I help people become better caregivers by teaching them tools not only to help the person that they're caring for, but most importantly, tools to help themselves. And I also offer my 65 years of personal experience to this whole equation. Now, this is video number 4 in a series of 10 ways to cope with big changes. And this was from an article in Psychology Today written by Stephanie Sarkis. And the article was originally posted in 2017, but these 10 ways to cope, what I'm doing is I'm listing the ways that Stephanie has mentioned in her article and adding my own personal experience to it. So today we're covering number 4, and that is try to eat as healthy as possible. When we're going through big changes, I think sometimes the first things to go is taking care of ourselves. And this is true, especially when people become caregivers, especially for the first time, is you're going through this big change of how you're dealing with things, the stress, the overwhelm. And sometimes it's easier to start to eat out, to eat junk food, to eat snacks, to not really take care of ourselves like we should. And sometimes we've gone through a whole lifetime of not doing this for ourselves. So a great way to cope with big changes is try to eat as healthy as possible. Now, you can use James Clear's book on atomic habits about how to make change happen and how to make it permanent. I love his work because it's taking small steps. Because if you're used to eating an unhealthy diet, it's not going to be easy to all of a sudden be eating raw vegetables and smoothies, green smoothies that have no sugar and low carbs and the whole thing. Oftentimes you can even have physical reactions to it. I remember when I was back in college, I was a research scientist and I had been exposed to all kinds of chemicals. And when I left science to just take my life in a new direction, I had a friend who was a naturopath, and he had this detoxification diet in order to get these chemicals that were being stored in my fat cells and my sinuses to get these chemicals out of my body. And so I remember it was a broth of parsley and tomatoes and onions that you mainly drank this broth. You ate cheese that had probiotics, and that was it. And I went from not being a terrible eater, I think I was still somewhat vegetarian at the time, to doing this very strict eating program. And these chemicals started coming out in my body. I could taste chemicals in my mouth, and I could tell you what year I worked with that chemical. It's amazing what our bodies store. So I actually got quite ill as these chemicals were coming out and going into my bloodstream from being stored in my liver and fat cells and sinuses. So you have to be careful to make when if you try to make a big change. But if you find that you used to eat a fairly healthy diet and you're coping with a big change in your life, and all of a sudden you're getting used to fats, you're getting used to salt, you're getting used to sugar, you're um it's going to actually make coping with the stress worse, because you're going to feel worse physically. And as it is, you're going through this change that's hitting you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and then you're adding more distress to your body. So this tool is all about trying to maintain your diet as it was, and maybe even start to improve it. Now, I'm still going through this myself. I gained an extra 20 pounds coping with being a caregiver to my brother. And he's not even that difficult to take care of. He lives alone now. He's on a medication that helps him function fairly well. And we have a communication system that helps me maintain a fairly regular schedule of my own. I have to take him to doctor's appointments occasionally, or we do check on him daily. He either checks in with us or we check in with him. But I found that some of the stress was one of the reasons why my eating habits changed so much is in the process of moving my brother from New Mexico to Washington State. It involved two trips. The first trip I flew down, threw him in a Penske truck within a week, and drove him from New Mexico to Washington State. And of course, we ate junk food all the way back. And then we got him settled here. I flew back down, loaded his car, finished all unfinished business down in New Mexico, shipped boxes, loaded his car, and drove once again from New Mexico to Washington State, all within a couple months. And I really got back addicted to fast food because it's easy on the road, especially if you're driving long distances alone. And the first trip, my brother couldn't drive because of the seizures. He was no longer able to drive. So both trips, I had to do all the driving for 3 days for each trip, all by myself. So I found that I'm still changing back to eating a healthier diet. So as I've mentioned in my other videos, when you're going through the stress of coping with change, be patient with yourself. It'd be great. Some people can do it. They can have a baby and get back to their former weight and eating habits right away. And man, I applaud that type of discipline. I don't have it. For me, I eat my emotions. I use food as a drug to keep me going. So it takes me longer to readjust my eating habits after a change, dealing with the stress of that. But I'm patient with myself. I try not to beat myself up too much. We're always harder on ourselves. But be patient with yourself and use a tool such as James Clear in Atomic Habits, bringing back some small changes. This year it's been great because I've been gardening again, finally, for the first time in several years. And when I have the fresh kale out in my garden, when I have peas, when I have strawberries, when I have raspberries, all I have to do is walk out the back door and pick it. It's available, it's fresh, it's delicious, it's organic. It's easier for me to eat healthy. So, and I love that gardening takes stress out of my life. So, anyway, as you're going through tough changes, coping, diet can be a real factor, but do your best to, as soon as possible, make those little changes so that you can walk yourself back to eating a healthy diet. So with that, I'll say goodbye for today. My website is carewithoutdespair.com. That's where I have my caregiver support information, classes, coaching. I also have some different information on jeanmcdonald.com. If you need someone to come speak to a group or that's mostly, public speaking schedule or virtual speaking schedule is on that website. And just once again, learn to be patient with yourself. And tomorrow I'll cover The fifth way to cope with big change, according to the Psychology Today article, and it fits exactly with today's topic, is exercise. So with that, see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.